Don't let the last minute pressure get on you. Watch this video and arm yourself with the knowledge and strategies required to ace the IPMAT exam 2023 with current MBA student from IIM Indore.
As you know, IPMAT is an exam that people give immediately after they finish their 12th grade. And it's, to my knowledge at the very least, it's one of the first courses that lets you study in an IIM at a B school of an IIM level immediately after your school. And I think one misconception a lot of people have is that the integrated program is a BBA plus MBA. But the program is not a BBA program, it's the undergrad program. And initially, it also used to be certified by another university, but now you get a certification directly from IIM Indore. Whereas the undergrad degree that you actually get is a BA. It's a liberal arts course, and you study various subjects, everything from economics, statistics, calculus, to philosophy, programming, and like political science. So you cover a lot of different subjects. You're exposed to so much more. And being in a B school at a very young age sort of makes you get that business acumen at a younger age as compared to a lot of other people. And I think the exposure that you get into corporate from being in an IIM is much greater as someone who spends their 5 years immediately after school inside a B school. So I think that's what's special about IPMAT. Biggest exams that I was giving after 12, but it was not one of my first priorities also at the same time. I wanted to do like a bachelor's in science and economics. And this was something that was very similar to an economics program because economics is one of our core subjects. And I think like when I did get the offer letter from IIM Indore, it sort of comes a bit late, and I was already in another institute because the offers hadn't been rolled out yet. And I think when I got it, I just was like, you know what, this sounds great, so let's go for it. And once after coming here and like having been exposed to another degree as well for like a month, I feel like this was a great decision on my part. And because like I mentioned, we study so many subjects. It's a very academically rigorous course. And I think for someone who knows for a fact that they want to get into the corporate and that they eventually want to do an MBA, I feel like this is a great course to do, especially now because it's more flexible. It's like much more flexible. For example, from my batch, we have this option of taking a sabbatical after our third year, working for a year or two, and then coming back for our MBA without giving CAT. Once you've cleared IPMAT, your MBA seat is also reserved. And you also, I think it just makes you more sure of what you want to do. And if there is someone who feels like maybe MBA is not what they want to do after the third year, they can always opt out. They get the first 3 years, they get the degree for the first 3 years, they get an undergrad degree. And because you're exposed to so many subjects, you're also sure of what other thing you want to do other than an MBA, because like you find what you like in those 3 years and the number of projects you do, the extracurricular activities that are there. It's a fully residential campus. So like the people you meet, everything, I think just everything adds to your personal development and your career's development. And I think that's very different as compared to most courses that are there outside apart from this. Very, very common mistake people do when they're giving whatever exam for that matter is that when they get to a question that's something that they know the concept of, but they're not super sure as to how to solve, people get stuck up on that question. And then like, your ego starts acting up. It was like, what is this? I can solve this question. So like you waste a lot of time on that. And in a paper that's time bound, I think it's very important to realize when you have to move on to the next question. I would personally, at least that's what I did when I gave all the entrance exams like 4 years back, is every time I knew for a fact that I knew the answer and I could solve it in like less than a minute, I'd answer that. And then I'd come back to the questions that I was a little less sure of. And then at the very end is when I'd solve the questions that seemed a bit difficult, because this way you're at least finishing all the questions that you're confident about, and then like later coming to the set of questions that have a second priority where you know the concept, you just need a bit more of time. And from what I know, every section in IPMAT has a 40-minute time limit, and you can't change your sections when you're solving. So you finish one section, you move on to the next. And because you have to give one section in the order that you select, it's important to, like, just move on, be very calm. And I feel like last minute preparation is one thing that does not help, at least for me personally. I don't believe in it. A lot of people giving IPMAT, they must have been preparing for like a good 2 months. And even if they did not, like giving 2-3 mocks a day for like the next 3-4 days. There are lots of mock tests available online, and I think if you pay some 100 rupees, you can access different mock papers. And just giving that, knowing that okay, this is a topic that I am missing out on like 2-3 mocks consecutively, then focusing on those and just knowing when to move on, knowing your weak areas, and either skipping them or working hard on them before the exam would really help people crack the paper. And you start with that section, and then you slowly like move, you choose the next section. And because it's so like I think there are 45 questions in the verbal ability part, 15 short answer quantitative questions, and 30 MCQ quantitative questions. So for me, I'm personally very comfortable with language and verbal ability. So I feel like that was a subject that that was a section that I felt like I could finish quick, and it wouldn't really drain me out as much in the beginning. So I started off with that. I got done with that like quickly, less than the time limit I had. And I just moved on to the next one, because when you start with a section that you feel you are a bit more comfortable in, or you're more confident about, it also like gives you that confidence, and like it boosts your confidence, and you just move like when you move on to the next section, you're not already drained out. Like some people, if you're not great at math, and if you start off with short answer quantitative, where you have to find your own answer and you don't have the help of MCQs either, I feel like that just drains you out, and that puts you under like some stress immediately after the first section, and you have 2 more sections to go to. So starting with a section that you are comfortable with, and just doing things that you are very comfortable and confident in, and then moving to the ones that sets, time, distance, and like the basic things that you, not basic, I wouldn't say it's basic, but like everything that you do in school is what's asked. There's nothing outside of what you do for school. And a lot of online resources have the exact subjects and the concepts listed. So I feel like referring to those and just doing a mental check as to, okay, this is something I'm comfortable in, and just focusing on topics that might be weak for a particular student would be good enough. Gave online tests, and they were fine. And even for me, although I did take a crash course, I felt like all that the crash course did was give some structure to the way I was preparing. And it was everything that I learned in the crash course was what I did in school. The concepts were concepts I already knew. All that the coaching does is set a structure for you and help you finish one topic at a time. And for people who have difficulty self-studying, I would highly recommend doing a crash course after board exams. But again, people who are confident that they can study on their own and finish off whatever work they have, like, on their own, and they don't need like external motivation. I feel like following 1 or 2 guidebooks, I think Arihant has a guidebook for IPMAT, and just doing those goes a long way. At the end of the day, you need to have your concepts clear. If it's like by yourself or through a coaching, it really depends on what's comfortable for you. And one of the quant section is MCQ, and the other one is short answer, where you just enter the final answer. Verbal ability for me personally was easy, because language is something I'm comfortable with. And maths was also a subject that I personally enjoyed in school. And because of that, although it was difficult, I enjoyed giving the paper. And I think that's important, like enjoying giving the paper. And I think that's very, a lot of people are going to hate me for saying it, but like when you like the subject and when you know that this is what you want to do, I feel like even giving an exam can be fun. And everyone was like very stressed after they gave the exam. And like people feel like they haven't done well, but oftentimes, even though you feel like you haven't done well, you've actually done great, because again, it's sort of relative. And if you are confident with the concepts, that's good enough. But for me, verbal ability, I just went for it. It was more intuitive, because English is something a lot of us speak regularly, if not at home, at least at school. So for that, I don't think there's much like strategy involved, but I would recommend going through the book Word Power, because that sort of helps you develop that intuition when it comes to language, and it gives you some background into the techniques that go into answering certain questions and understanding language much better. And for quants, MCQ, you solve your questions and you cross check with the MCQs. But if it's not matching with any MCQ, then you can always like try to put the answer in first and then solve with each option, provided you have time. I think that's something I did for a few
All
questions.
right.
And for quantitative short answer,
Right.
it's I was sort of panicked when I gave the short answer, because I was like, okay, it could be literally anything. How am I supposed to know? So once you give your exam, you wait for your results. And if you've cleared the exam and if you've been selected for the next round, you get a mail naturally. And the next round is actually like an essay writing component. So all of this happens with the personal interview. So my center was Delhi, and everyone goes there and you given a topic and you have to write an essay on that topic. But I've noticed with my juniors that changed a little bit during the COVID years. Like they had to submit a 1 minute video about themselves. But considering things are going offline again, I'm guessing you'll be back to writing an essay on a topic that they provide. And the topics they provide are usually like topics that are relevant for today's day and time, but also something that is generic enough for the mass to know about. So for me, it was about water pollution. So I had to write an essay about the water pollution situation. And once you give your essay, you wait for your turn. Like people are called one by one. My panel had two people, and in fact, one of them taught me in my IPM time. Like for the first 3 years, I had him for 2, 3 courses. So all the people you meet at your interview, you're very, very likely gonna be studying from them as well. When it comes to preparing for the interview, I think you need to first know yourself. That is very important for an interview, just knowing yourself, because that's more often than not the first question they ask you. Can you tell us about yourself? And being confident about that, being confident when you answer that is important, because then it shows them that like, okay, this person is confident in themselves. They know what they're doing. They know what they like. They know what they've done. And once you have that question ready, and I feel like you can steer the interview in your direction if you answer that well, because a lot of the questions that followed up after were things that were picked up from my introduction. So like they asked me to talk about NCC, my liking for literature and such. So that's how the interview started. And that takes a good time. If you just mention a few things that you've done in your personal introduction, and in like that sort of intrigues them to ask more and know more about certain things, especially when you've done something that not everyone does. And after that, there will be questions. Like I think everyone that I spoke to had questions about like making a graph or finding equations, like plotting a graph. Those were common questions that people were asked in their interview. And it depends on what background you're from. I was from a science and economics background. And in the beginning itself, I'd mentioned that economics was what I was intending on doing. I wasn't like going to give engineering exams or anything. So all the questions that I was asked were math based and economics based, and they weren't much. Like there were 2, 3 questions from each subject. And after that, we moved into the current affairs. 2019 was also when the elections were happening. So for me, it was sort of around the election procedure, what different sorts of elections are, what different houses do, different chief ministers and such. And they end with, like my interview ended with the question, how would you why do you think IPMAT is a perfect fit for you? Mm-hmm. And that these are 2 questions, like your personal introduction and why you want IPM. Like these 2 questions will be asked a lot to many people, especially when you come from like a science background, because they're like, why not engineering? And like, if you get into an IIT or a NIT, would you prefer that over IIM Indore? So like, just having smart answers to these questions and knowing the current affairs will go a long way. Personally, and something that I've seen helped a few of my friends as well, is not touching your books on the day of exam. Don't do anything before the exam. Don't look at any concepts. Don't discuss random questions with your friends. Just have a good night's sleep, have like good breakfast, and go to the exam center, because discussing things last minute, and if you happen to discuss something that you haven't touched upon, that'll just like freak you out and you'll be under stress, and that's like a recipe for disaster. So just relaxing on the day of the exam before going into the exam, I think is very important, because then you're going with a calm and steady mind, and being calm, especially because it's a time-bound test, is very important. So I think these are things that people often are told, but they don't really do, because it's like, oh, there was this one concept that I missed. So they just open their book, and then like that one concept leads to 10 other concepts. And like when you start doing that last minute, your brain just gets all worked up. And I feel like that is a major contributor to stress before exams. Like all the last minute study you want to do, you can do it once you come to college, because college is all about last minute studies. But like entrance exams, that is one thing you really need to avoid.
Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel.